Everyone can see my screen, I think. So here we go. The GitHub from yesterday, which has the assignments here. And the assignment for exercise 1 is in this translations code sandbox. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And here are the instructions here. So you need to run yarn start is one of the main things that is in this instructions here. And one thing that perhaps we could have clarified a little bit better is that in code sandbox, that is not maybe as straightforward as you might think. So we'll show you how to run yarn start to do this generation in code sandbox specifically. It's perhaps easier or more straightforward when you're on a local machine. And then we'll see what how we start to actually generate these strings and how we translate them and how we incorporate those translations into our application. So first of all, I'm going to log into a server. So we have this URL here. So we have a very, very basic application. It has just a couple pieces of text in it. And one of those is saying welcome, and the other is saying, in case you want to know, the current time is this. This is the current time. So we're going to need to translate this, right? And we'll show you how to do that. But first, let's see how we would run yarn start to generate translations. In order to do that, I'm going to actually make this into a translated string. Hendrik, stop me if you don't want me to go through the whole exercise. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through it so that people can learn. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, I think it's good to show because of the added complexities in code sandbox. I think it's good.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so this is how we will change the text welcome exclamation point to something that can be translated. And you'll see that there's red underneath this because i18n is not defined. We import i18n. Import i18n. Where do we import that from? As I mentioned yesterday, there are actually two places where we can import this variable or this object. And those two places are, one is at dhis2/d2 i18n, and the other, which is, yeah, I'm going to start with this one, and I'll cover the other one in a minute. So we have one string exactly here, i18n.t, welcome. We have at dhis2/d2 i18n, we're importing the i18n object or namespace. I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And you should see that this is actually restarting this server on the right side here. In a moment, it will come back up. In this case, it had to restart or had to fork the sandbox before it would actually allow me to use it. So that's why that took a minute longer than it usually is. So let's go back to our file and let's save it. See, we're not saved here. I don't know why it's not letting me save actually. Oh, because it doesn't have the right one. So because I forked it, it didn't actually get my changes. So I'm going to put i18n.t, same thing we had before. And import that from here. Save that file. will let me save. Why is it not letting me save? Apparently we have a code sandbox issue here. I'm going to refresh my page. And you'll see that the code sandbox should still be running on the right-hand side there. But now we have, we should have, yeah, now I was able to, sorry about that. So code sandbox can be a little finicky sometimes, but it does, I was able to save that after refreshing the page. But you'll see that no files were actually generated here, right? And the reason for that is because yarn start had already been run, and we need to, if you look back at the instructions, as well as in the presentation, you need to run yarn start or yarn build again to regenerate those files. So let's see how we would do that in Code Sandbox. In a typical environment that you have locally, it should be fairly easy just to run yarn start. So there are two ways we could do that here. Number one is on the left here, there's a server control panel, and you can click restart server. That's one option. So I'm going to go ahead and try that option. So you should see that it comes back up in just a minute. You can see that on the right here, it's running yarn start or D2 app script start. You can actually even see that it wrote one language string to sandbox i18n en.pot, which is what we want. And we can actually see that file. So if we go to the list of files on the left here, we can see that en.pot was generated. So that's the file that we want. That's the correct one. And we'll see that that has this one string that we have translated, which is welcome, with no translation because this is the English version. And you'll see that obviously because we don't have a translation yet, we only have the welcome text here in English and not in any other language. So let's see how we add an actual translation of that file. So I'm going to copy everything in this file. I'm actually going to create a new file under i18n. I'm going to call it es.po. Going to paste everything that I had there before, and I'm going to write the translation. So bienvenidos, Spanish for welcome. I'm going to save this file. And so you would think maybe this would be enough. Maybe we need to restart the server again. So let's go ahead and actually let's do it the other way that you could do this. So you have yarn start running over here on the right side in the terminal. There's a little plus button on the far right side of your screen. You can press that and you'll get a second terminal. So this you can run any command in your container here. So to do that, you can run yarn start or yarn build. Because yarn start starts an actual server which runs in the background, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do yarn build. I'm going to do -- verbose just to see all of the output from this file. But this will generate a production version of our application, which we'll talk about more tomorrow. I'm going to do that, and you can actually see that it's doing the whole build here. But you can actually see that the files that we want have been. So first of all, we've written translation files from our strings. So parsed 2 files, didn't find any updates to i18n. But then we're reading those translation sources, generating JSON files, and generating these files in our source code. As we mentioned, those are the kind of the generated files. So everything seems to have worked, and this actually created the whole application as well. One thing that was maybe a gotcha here is that we saw that this had actually generated these files. So it generated source locales index, source locales en translations.json, so source locales es translations.json, but we don't actually necessarily see that here. So sometimes these files won't show up, and Code Sandbox gets confused. In this case, actually, they did appear. So we have our translations.json for en. ES didn't show up for some reason. But this is actually kind of to be expected. So we should also be able to just refresh our page. We should probably get back to a good situation. Yeah, so now we have a single locales with an en. There's also an es, or there should be, but it's not showing up here for whatever reason. This is sort of to be expected, or it's confusing in Code Sandbox. I apologize for that. It shouldn't have any issues when you're running locally, but it should also work here in the application itself. And you'll see that we don't have a translated string here on the right hand side for whatever reason, even though if I go to my settings, oops, and now we have a connection issue. Oh, maybe I have to go. I'm going to pop this out. Yeah. So my language set is set to Spanish. So that means that this should be bienvenidos, but it's not for some reason. So let's go to figure out why. And if you remember, one of the gotchas or one of the tricks or hints that I gave yesterday was that you need to import this locales/index.js file at least once somewhere in your application. And it also exports the @dhis2/d2ietn. So we can actually just change this import from this to ./locales/index. We can do .js if we want. Index and .js are technically optional there. But this basically allows us to recreate or to load the translations themselves at runtime for this application.
Sorry, Austin.
Yeah.
I had just followed your steps, but I am still not having the locales folder under the source folder.
On the left side?
Yeah.
So it may be that that Code Sandbox is just lagging behind. So sometimes the files don't actually show up there until later. So I would assume that they are there if it looks like it's working. And if not, then then ask me. If this complains that the file doesn't exist, that's what actually matters. But there's I think a bug in Code Sandbox where sometimes the generated files don't show up immediately in the list.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to restart my server here. And we should, yeah, so now we get Yarn D2 app script start again. Loading. And here we go. So you'll notice that I had to refresh this on the right side here because when I restarted the server, it didn't pick up that the server had changed. That's just something that occasionally you'll need to refresh the page. You can do the same here on this side here. But you'll see that now we have it working. So bienvenidos is showing because we're a user that has the Spanish language instead of welcome. And the reason for that was because we changed this ietn import from @dhis2/d2ietn to ./locales/index. So you can use @dhis2/d2ietn, but you need at least one place somewhere in your application, you need to use locales/index because that locales/index file is where it actually loads these translations. And this is an older version of the file because Code Sandbox is being slow, but it would load the English and the Spanish translations. Otherwise, you wouldn't get those loaded. So that's the second issue that showed up. So the first was that the files weren't being generated. You should see at least these en.pot and es.po files on the left side here. You actually write the es.po file yourself. Source/locales can be a little bit funny in when it shows up here, but even if it doesn't show up here, you can still use it because it still exists in the container, and you can import it like this from your application. Once you import from this file instead of from the instead of from the D2 IETNN library, then it will actually load the translations that you've created. So let's go ahead and add a second translation here. You'll notice that this one's going to be a little bit different. And I think I've already figured out what perhaps the challenge was. So we say, in case you want to know, and then these need to be replaced somehow, right? So let's go ahead and change these to interpolation, as we mentioned yesterday. So this is going to be hours. And I'll go ahead and create this. So hours is going to be this. Minutes is going to be this. And we should be able to see this here. This was the second issue that I saw some people had run into. And it should work like this, I believe. Let's see what we can do. So this is the live coding part of the evening. So let's just see what would happen if we did that without any translation or any interpolation. So it still is not working. Why is that? Let's figure that out. Perhaps, I know why. You know why as well, probably. So let's put this interpolation back. Oops. Yeah. And the reason is, so you'll see that this is actually working, right? So even though it's only in English, our interpolation is working, and we have 1033 on the right-hand side here. But if you'll remember, in order to generate those files, we need to restart the server. So let's go ahead and click Restart Server here. And we could also open a new tab and run yarn build if we wanted to. But you'll see that now this is stopped the server, and it's starting a new one again. And here's the problem. So this actually isn't going to work because hours hours and minutes have a colon between them, and you can't use colon in your IETNN string. This is a very good gotcha. And the reason is because IETNN uses this as a specific namespace separator. So in order to do this, we could change it to this, or we could just say, change this to one thing, which we will call time. And we'll say time is going to be replaced with this, colon, this. So let's now restart our server to make that happen. And we'll see what the problem comes up here. So you will see that this actually did work, because we have here writing two language strings to en.pot. So our two strings here, this one and this one, should now appear in this en.pot file. And it's true that they do. So we have welcome, and we have, in case you want to know, time is the current time. So now we can copy this to the other
But keep the message ID the same.
Sorry. Thank you. This is a little bit confusing because it's, you have, so in this case, the time is actually a different place. So let's go ahead and restart the server now again. Looks like maybe we are no longer in the Spanish mode. Someone changed it to English. And there we go. So we have bienvenidos, and we have si quieres saber, la hora es 10:47 minutos. So we have a translation now, and you can refresh this on the side here and it'll say the same thing. The gotcha there, which is a little bit tough to, and maybe we didn't cover it yesterday, is that this is not a valid character in a translation string. So you have to avoid those. We're working on ways to get around this in the future, but for now, you can't use a colon in the key, so the English version of your string. You have to move that outside of the translation for the moment. There you have it. So that, I believe it was the entire, this was my first time doing this exercise, but Hendrik, was that that everything that I was supposed to do?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think the gotcha that I demoed was actually quite useful, but it was unintentional. So apologies for that. Austin wasn't trying to trip you up there.
Oh, no problem. That was a good test of of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does I saw that some people were following along as well. Was anybody not able to do that who was following along?
Yeah,
No.
well, I actually couldn't get the bienvenidos string translated yet. And even if I imported the IE18 from locales, it recognizes it. So you are right in the fact that the Code Sandbox is not showing the folder, but is still there.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting the string translated even with that.
Are you able to share the link to your Code Sandbox so that I can?
Yeah, sure. I put it in the Slack. Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to put it.
Everyone is using the same backend and the language of the user is being changed constantly?
Yeah. So I would say that if everyone can try to make sure that, oops, and you can't go to the other URL in this, but I would ask that everyone, so there actually is a second user that has the Spanish language, as Hendrik pointed out. So if you log in instead of as Jean Soil, so I'm going to change Jean Soil to English.
I'm using the user that was created in Spanish. I don't know.
So I'm gonna change this. So if everyone can agree to keep this user in English, and then we'll log out, and I will log in now as the user that Hendrik had created, which was username user ES and password test123 exclamation point.
Yeah, that's right. That was the one I was using.
I'm going to log in as that user now. And now I'm going to go back to my translations application. And you'll see that with this user, I have, si quieres saber, la hora es, entonces. And I'm going to open a new tab in incognito mode, and I'm going to go to the same URL. I'm going to put in the name of our server here. Admin and district. Oh, right. Maybe this doesn't work in incognito mode, actually. That's a fair point. I'm going to do some quick debugging while we wait for that Code Sandbox link. Oh, there it is. Cool. Okay. So we'll see that we do have welcome and bienvenidos. I forgot the first exclamation point. I apologize, Spanish speakers. So, this was not working for you, Sergio. Is that right? Sergio?
Quite likely it just needed one more restart.
Alice just changed the settings. Participants cannot unmute themselves now. You have to.
I rechanged again. He can unmute himself.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so Sergio, it looks like it did work. It probably just needed one more restart of the server, would be my guess, because that would be my guess. I don't know.
Okay, I can now unmute myself again. Well, I was restarting like several times. I don't know why. I mean, even if I restart from my...
I can see it restarting here. You just restarted. Yeah.
But still, welcome is being shown. So I don't know. It maybe it's something with my Chrome or something like that, because... I mean, there are not so many steps to take, so I don't know where I can...
Yeah, so one thing you could try is in your, you could try disable cache here in your...
Maybe clear cache or something like that, or...
You could clear as well, but if you disable cache, then when you refresh this page, it will clear everything. So that could be something. I don't think that would matter, but it could be.
Well, but you use my link and it's working, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe this.
This is mine. So this one is...
Looking back, I think this would have been an exercise that would have been better to do locally. I didn't know there were so many problems with Code Sandbox.
Yeah, it works quite well when you're running it locally, because it should basically pick it up as soon as you restart the server. But yeah, that is something we can look into, making sure that it works in different environments, particularly in Code Sandbox. But yeah, I think there are just some kind of gotchas about Code Sandbox that are unfortunate that we...
Yeah, just to say that after I cleared cache, I was able to see bienvenidos. So that was it.
So it must have been the cache. Okay, cool. I'm glad that worked. It wasn't my fault. Okay, so does anyone else have any challenges or questions, or that were following along and this didn't work for some reason?
Please, Austin, I just want to be sure that even though the local folder is not generated, we should be able to translate our text, if I understand that. Because I didn't put the
So it is.
local and my code source, my source code.
Yeah, so it is generated. It should show up, but in some cases, I think Code Sandbox doesn't show it. So like in my case, it is generated and you can see it. However, these are the older versions of the files because the ones that are actually generated, as you can see on the right here, have another string as well and have Spanish. So for some reason, Code Sandbox doesn't pick up the changes to these files sometimes because they're generated during the build process. So I would say you could ignore whether or not this source/locales exists. It's also in gitignore, or it should be in gitignore. So actually, maybe that's why I'm seeing it and you're not. So if I save this again and refresh, maybe it will change. I'm not sure. But I think that is why you don't see it, because those generated files should not be committed to Git. So that's why, for instance, in Sergio's version, I don't see those files at all. However, you can still import from those files. They exist on the file system. So you just need to pretend that they exist and import them directly, and it should work. Does that answer your question, Gerard?
Yes, it's clear.
Apologize for the that can be a bit confusing, I know. It looks like maybe Pete was unmuted for a minute there and then put it back, Pete muted again.
Yeah, I've got a 502 server error whenever I try and start the server now for some reason. It seems like most of I have the locales folder under SRC, but there's just an index.js and no actual, like.
Have you tried refreshing the page there? On the browser, like pseudo browser window on the right-hand side?
I've cleared my cache completely, but I can try just refreshing the page as well.
Oftentimes that will happen when the server is in the process of being restarted. So 502 is actually a gateway error, and that means that the server behind the gateway isn't running yet. So while the server is restarting, sometimes you'll get a 502, but it should clear itself up if the server starts successfully.
I'm getting, whenever I run start, when I run yarn start, I'm getting start script exited with non-zero exit code. Command failed, so I don't think that it's starting up at all.
All right, yeah, so that is a problem. Can you share that Code Sandbox and we can look at that?
Yeah, it's in the technical support channel.
I know you didn't choose it, but I like the name of your Code Sandbox. It's called Nifty Fast.
It's pretty good. I just fork repeatedly for hours until I get a good name.
Okay, so what do we have here? What's the problem? So let's go ahead and open a new terminal. Oh, let's open a new terminal. Strange. So you said when you restart the server, maybe I can't because I have to fork it. I'm gonna fork it and do the same thing. So I have to get a worse name. That's pretty cool.
I don't even know what that second word means.
I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader. Okay, so let's figure out what this is. So this is a good example of how to debug things. So we'll see that this start script failed, and it doesn't really tell us what happened. It just says that something exited with a non-zero exit code, which isn't super exciting. So we can look at that output again here. Start script with exited with non-zero exit code. But let's figure out what's actually going on. So if we run yarn start, but we add dash dash verbose here, it'll tell us what actually happened. So there's an error parsing the PO data, which is the file that you created. The key name HTTPS is incorrect. So let's look at that file. So that's this file here. And that's because we have this at the top, which is incorrect. So that should be message ID, just like that. So it looks like there was just an incident.
Copy paste error. I have no idea how that appeared in the copy pasting the file there. That's weird.
Now restart the server. But that was a good example of figuring out how to debug a failed start. You can use the dash dash verbose flag to figure out what's actually going on. And now it should have started in just a moment. It should refresh. Otherwise, I can refresh this here. Should. Not sure why that's not working. Oh, it is working. There we go. So it's loaded again. So that should get you back up and running, I think.
Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else have anything to add? To ask about this exercise or the previous exercises as well? No other questions? Okay, that's actually pretty good timing. We'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back, and Jan Gerke will talk about testing. If you run into any other challenges or problems, feel free to add them in Slack, and we will address them as well. Jan Gerke, do you want to add something?
Yes, I saw that the exercises that I created with Code Sandbox did not work for me in Firefox on my computer. They worked in Chrome though, so I'm not sure if others are going to have that issue as well, but I think it would be good if everyone could have a Chrome or Chromium at hand to do the exercises.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, if you don't have that available for some reason, if you want to download it, that would be useful, I think. Or mention that it wouldn't work for you if you only have Firefox in technical support, and we'll work on that. Cool. So let's come back at 10 past the hour. So we'll give a whole 15-minute break today, which is what was the intent the whole time. Get up, take a stretch, get some coffee, get some water, whatever floats your boat. Do what you need. And we'll be back here at 10 after the hour for a session on testing from Jan Gerke. Thank you all very much, and feel free to add any questions or follow-up that you have to Slack as well, and we'll address that. Thank you. Talk to you soon.